All right, so we're working in the shop today, and it's a pretty hot day for us here in the Great Pacific Northwest. It's 94, I think. Stella is leading the way by laying on the cool concrete. But not only is there a little sunshine outside, we've got our door closed trying to keep the natural coolness inside. We've got a little sunshine inside with this little sunshine colored 76 CVCC. And a couple of guys were interested in an update on this car. They're pretty cool. You don't see them anymore. This is a 4-speed. It's got a new paint job, and the customer is very excited to get it back on the road. And you can see there's a big component of the engine that's missing here. It came in for a carburetor adjustment of all things. He put a Weber carburetor on it, and no bracketry, no throttle cable, no nothing, and it ran terrible. It didn't run at all. So the points were seized up, and I put electronic ignition on it and got the carburetor to run, fired up, and it ran, but ran terrible. It ran on 3 cylinders. This cylinder here, pretty obvious, pretty quickly was burning water. And if we look at the head gasket here, you can see it's really compromised in this area. It's just soft. I don't think there's any damage. There's a lot of corrosion buildup, and that's probably right along there. I've got to clean all that out. That's probably normal just because this is an old engine. I think it's a 1487 cc and it's CVCC. In other words, it's a 8 valve with pilot valves, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. But anyhow, we got a new head gasket for it. It took a week or so to find one. Had all the machine shops looking, and nobody could find a head gasket for this thing. I finally found one online. So we've got electronic ignition, we've got a Weber carburetor, we've got the head gasket. And our new head gasket has arrived here. It looks good. It also came with a new intake gasket, and I got to show you a couple things. So the way this thing is mounted on the engine, this is your intake manifold. Your carburetor would go on top here, which this is your carburetor, a brand new Weber. It's bolted directly to the exhaust manifold for heat exchange to warm the plenum. And then you've got this great big huge gasket that goes in between. And you can see there's soot on the bottom of the intake manifold. That's from the opening here in the top of the exhaust manifold to warm the base of the carburetor to keep it from icing up and that type of thing. I thought this gasket was leaking. You can see it's all burnt and rough here, so I just assumed that this was leaking, but it's not. The combination intake and exhaust gasket, which goes on the engine like this, goes like this. You can see these are all completely burned out. This is a 4-cylinder engine. You can see the 4 combustion chambers there, but it has Siamese exhaust ports. And I don't know what's going on here, but the insulators, one of these things fell out. This surface is all uneven. I've got to figure out how to take these studs out and flatten this, so that the new gasket doesn't look like this one with holes in it, that are just completely burnt out. But it was leaking a lot of exhaust here, and I thought it was from that, but it turns out it was from the Siamese exhaust ports. So I've got some work ahead of me. I've got to clean up the bottom of the head, or get the head surfaced, make sure it's flat and not corroded, and make sure these are flat so that we can get a seal from the new gaskets on there. I'm sure they're like some type of fire ring or copper or something, but it concerns me that those are all burnt like that. So got some work to do, a little research. That's what you run into with these old cars, but it's interesting how it's got Siamese exhaust ports like that. This exhaust system is designed for emissions. It doesn't have a catalytic converter in it, but you can see how big this manifold is, and it's not straight through. It's got ducts in there. So the exhaust comes out of the engine and it makes like an S shape, I'm assuming to reburn it in some fashion. There's no air pump or anything, but kind of weird. I'm glad to see that this exhaust manifold is not cracked. I don't think I could ever find another one, but it's definitely been leaking. You can see the soot there and there. And let's turn it over and look at the other side. It rattles. You can hear there's a bunch of stuff loose in it, so I've got to get in there and figure out what's broken. I think it's got some baffles that are broken. When I shake it like that, it sounds like a mariachi drum. So we've got our work ahead of us, cut out. Let's look at the head while we're here. I'll show you those pilot valves. It's hard to do with one hand. I can do it. Okay. So what makes this a CVCC is you've got your intake and exhaust off this side here where my hand is. Intake on the top, exhaust on the bottom. Intake, exhaust, and then you've got these little tiny pilot valves here, and the spark plugs are sort of where the electrodes are shrouded. So it's for complete convex combustion or something like that. We'll see about that. So we got to get this head cleaned up, fixed up, sealed, put all the parts back together, and get it back on this little car and make it run good. That's the plan. So that's the update on the little yellow Sunshine CVCC. Follow along for the next video and see if you can learn something like Stella, how to be a cool dog. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.